Are we ready? Okay. We're drinking Linden tea tonight, one of my all-time favorite herbs, one of my all-time favorite teas, baths, herbs, all-time favorite tinctures. We have Linden tincture. Notice how the tincture is like more perfumey and aromatic and just smells just like honey almost, right? It's like a delicious tincture. It makes a really good syrup too, like a cough syrup, sedative syrup. The nice thing is like Linden makes the best tincture, by the way, when it's in bloom on the tree. Like one tree would produce enough for an entire herbal company for a year, like a big tree. So, I mean, you're never gonna like hurt the tree by harvesting some at all. That's delicious. Oh, that's so good. So we're gonna be talking about Linden today. Does anybody have questions at all? Yeah.
So last week we were talking about like the forehead stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So me, my kids, a bunch of people in my family, like we got the purple bead here as our birthmark.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just like born with some like bam, there's an issue. I mean, you know.
What are you born with?
We have like the purple bead.
Mm-hmm.
Like you get really like mad or it's
Hmm.
super sad.
It's usually like a heart indication or sometimes liver, but usually heart though.
Probably like born with it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah. So when babies have, sometimes babies will get like a purple, the area between their eyes will get purplish, but not the forehead, but like right here. Yeah.
This is not
That is related more to fire. Yeah. So that's like heart fire. You're just born fiery. Probably pretty true, right? When the baby, that's something different. That's really unique. So when the babies have this purplish line or like a little area between their eyebrows right here, that's something that's always supposed to be treated in old days. It's yeah. Like in old Chinese beliefs, that means like the baby, or when it happens to adults, like people are intuitively opening or sometimes cracking open too fast, too much. They can get overwhelmed by being empathic too much or picking up on all this energy out there. So you're supposed to do a lot of energy work on it, and there's all herbs you put on it, and like they say you seal it, like you seal your third eye chakra, basically. Yeah, it's a direct indicator of your third eye chakra, the area right above that physically. And you notice like when kids will do good and then they'll start to go through a little phase where they're just emotionally off, like from the age of like 1 to 3, that little thing will come back every time. It's just the darnest thing. And then they'll kind of, once they get better, if you don't treat it, like it'll sometimes resolve on its own, and then they seem like emotionally better. And then I don't know, it's just one of those weird things that you'll never see in any book. Master Chen was really, 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 really big on that. So that was something he always looked at or talked about. Okay. So, but this V here, like she's talking about is more fire, right? This is the fire heart part of the face. So any other questions from last week at all? Anything? Everybody's looking tan. Everybody's been outside in nature, it looks like. No other questions? No, nothing. Okay. We going fast or slow today? Fast. Okay, let's do it. We're going to try to finish cardiotonics then, and we're just going to try to do hypotensives, things that lower blood pressure. But we're going to talk about Linden, so we could do a whole 2 hours on Linden easily. So we'll try to keep it to a half hour. How about that? Okay, so Linden, what's its energy and its nature? It is a little bit of everything, right? But its primary action is kind of outward or expressive. Because it opens up our pores, it makes us sweat. Even though it nurtures our heart, it kind of also opens the heart also. But its nature is probably more of a moisturizing. So we would use this when people have a tense constitution, like they're just really locked up. Physically, muscle tense, your heart is tense and has pressure, or you're physically, your muscles are tense, or you're emotionally tense. So we'd use it for tension or dryness. That's the weird thing about this herb that doesn't sometimes make sense, is that it's a diaphoretic, so it induces sweating. Typically, that means you're losing moisture. However, its overall property is that it's more moisturizing than it is drying. So we use this for dry tissue states. And we'll see some really unique things that we use that for. But its direction is mostly outward. Okay. Most of about 10% of the active ingredients in the plant is demulcent compounds, or these, what textbooks will just call mucilaginous, mucilage or mucilaginous, right? These ooey gooey, about 10% overall. It does have a bunch of essential oils and volatile oils, but its other main ingredients are going to be all these flavonoids we keep talking about. Remember how these keep coming up again and again, these antioxidants. So this is where a lot of the heart protective, heart healing, blood vessel protective, kind of heart supportive compounds are coming from in general. Okay. And then the third major category is antioxidants. Yeah. The third group would be polyphenols. This is where a lot of the nerve compounds are going to come from. So example, it has like, it's not like taking pure GABA, but it has small amounts of GABA and nerve compounds that are going to interact with the GABA receptors in your brain and nervous system. A lot of some of the unknown, in America, we don't use it enough for this way, but a lot of the anti-allergy compounds are coming from these flavonoids. Because remember, quercetin is a flavonoid and a lot of these things. So linden flower, even though we don't use it as much in America so commonly, it's got a lot of really great anti-allergy properties. We're talking about the flower, and sometimes the leaf is used, or a small amount of the leaf. There are minor uses for the bark and stems, but for the most part, it's always the flower. And when you get it, just because the flower is, it's a little bit more prolific because it's a tree. They usually don't have as much leaf in it. Like when you buy hawthorn flower, it's mostly actually the leaf you're getting and a little bit of flower, where in linden, it's mostly the flower. So we have quite a few lindens here in America and even in Nebraska. The main two ones we have here are like what are called little leaf and big leaf, which are easy to identify. They both seem to have the same medicinal properties. We always know it has a cordate leaf, right? That means like this is the stem, right? It has this heart-shaped leaf, cordate. So doctrine of signatures for what? The heart, right? Yeah. So oftentimes this is called basswood. So those of you that might not be familiar with the name linden, or it's also called lime tree. Has nothing to do with limes that we eat. I don't know why it's called lime tree. Lime tree or basswood. Okay, it has a ton of properties we'll talk about. You can put this in your note. This is one quirky thing I collected from a native person, that traditionally the stems, which we don't ever talk about in textbooks, are used for babies who have developmental problems or they can't walk. And traditionally, like a lot of times in Native American medicine, that would have been done as a bath probably to bathe the legs, or it would have been maybe added to some kind of steam therapy, not just necessarily taken internally. It could have been just massaged into the legs. So just put that in the back of your mind for future reference. Otherwise, we're always talking about the flowers. Okay, so I'm going to pass around this fun little nerdy thing. This is one of the great European classic textbooks of herbal medicine called Herbal Drugs and Phytopharmaceuticals. This is like considered one of the standards of like European herbal medicine, but I'll pass it around. The section on Linden's not super huge, but it's going to detail a whole bunch of stuff we've covered already in class and in Shay's classes, right? It's a phytopharmaceutical book, so it's going to talk a lot about identification. So it's got a whole botany thing here, right? It has microscopic pictures for microscope identification. It has crude botany, right? Showing you what the flower petals look like from like a bag of linden flowers that you would buy. It has the Latin name of the plant, right? It's going to have all the common names. It's going to have the origin, or like where is it native to originally. It's going to have a brief list of all the, no, this is not all the active constituents, right? If this was an active constituent list, it would be like hundreds and hundreds of constituents. These are just some of the main ones. Okay. It has clinical indications. And with this book here, this book is actually what the German Commission E, basically the German FDA, used this as a reference book in all their approving herbal drugs. So it actually, when it says clinical indications, it actually means this is what it's been approved for as a drug in Germany. It tells you how to make a tea. It talks about other herbal preparations like tinctures and capsules. Tells you how to identify it properly with microscopes and other chemistry methods. It's got a little example of one of the compounds, but not a lot. It's a pretty small write-up, right, compared to some things. A lot of identification, and then every really technical book will have a whole section on adulteration, meaning herbs that are commonly confused in the marketplace, or companies that aren't very good, that don't know, will often make mistakes. And these are like common mistakes that are known to exist. So is this book worth it as for most people? No, not at all. It's really not worth it, because you can get like all of this from other little pieces, and it's not like super practical. But if you're going to have like a An herb company where you want to know a little bit more of the technical identification with chemistry and that, it's a good book to have. So this is one of them that the FDA uses in America also. So I'll pass it around. It's really not worth it, guys. So, but unless you're gonna have like a company or something, but honestly, a lot of this in today's Google world, you can get even this botany and chemical stuff online now. So there's just so much that you can get online, but it's a good blend of everything. So I'll pass it around. It's like a $350 textbook. It's ridiculous. So, and probably even more now because there's probably newer editions. And we have a little Linden flower, little playing card. I'll pass around. Pass. Oh, let me do the opposite side. We'll go opposite directions. There you go. Okay. So that would be more of a European style textbook, right? Okay, let's get into it. So Linden, we're going to cherry pick a little bit of this, right? So we're going to go by areas. The first area is going to be the nervous system. So this we've talked about already as a nervine, right? It's one of our best nervines. And what do we really like Linden for as a nervine? When does it shine? It shines when people are having chest pain from anxiety, tightness in the chest, shortness of breath. It's very, very specific for heart palpitations and flutters, which in people that have them, it's a very emotionally stressful problem to have, because every time you have one, you feel like you're having a heart attack and you want to go to the ER, and often it creates this vicious cycle of like heart palpitations feeding anxiety, anxiety feeding heart palpitations. And 3 years down the road, people are it's just can be very stressful, can almost regulate people's lives with worry, especially if we have a family history of like heart attacks or strokes. So I saw somebody today whose mom had a heart attack really young and ignored all the symptoms, and she has heart palpitations. So I mean, literally, she thinks she's going to die every time she has a palpitation. Probably went to the ER 50 times last year, maybe more, because it gets intense. So, but all the cardiology tests have came back fine. But when you have that and you have that history, no matter how many heart tests you have, like you're still not, you don't feel comfortable with that. So one of the best uses of Linden is when people have heart palpitations, fluttering, just a feeling of like anxiety in the chest. That would also include people who have excess thyroid function that's making your heart race or making your heart go fast or your pulse go fast. So obviously we use it for all types of anxiety and stress and worry, especially when people start talking about their heart. And then emotionally, it's more powerful for anxiety, but it has a lot of antidepressant effects because it has, like Hawthorne, it has these really amazing ability to somehow emotionally heal the heart. I don't know how it does that. It is magic. Yes. I don't know how it does it. There's no chemical explanation for it. So together with Hawthorne, like Linden and Hawthorne, like are two archetypal heart remedies of all types, right? But Hawthorne is really specific when people are having issues related to their heart and anxiety in intimate relationships or family. Not so much like you're worried about the world and the media. This is more like, husbands, wives, immediate family. And that's like the cause of your stress or emotions or heartache, right? So we obviously use this for PTSD. We use it for people psychologically that are brokenhearted. We use it for people who have depression. And when there's an element of intimate relationship touching any of these things, it's even better. Like you have anxiety because of like past trauma in relationships. You feel sad because you don't have an intimate partner in your life and your heart is like yearning for that. Like that is Linden, right? We said that's the archetype of Linden, right? Someone who appears pretty happy on the outside, but on the inside has this deep yearning for love and love companionship. How do I know about this so well, right? Because I worked this archetype through myself, right? Yeah. What's that? It helps your heart to feel nurtured, and it gives you that like an emotionally satisfying almost feeling where you're not like searching all the time. Okay. It can be good for trapped heart emotions too. Like, you know, you have a lot on your heart, but you can't really verbalize it or quite express it because it has that outward action, right? Okay. Okay. So we would also use this for hysteria, shock, panic attacks, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay. The other area where we use it a lot with the nervous system is going to be, it is an amazing headache remedy and migraine remedy. It's good for acute migraine, acute headaches, chronic headaches, and chronic migraine. It's not really strong enough for like acute migraines, but if you take it long term, it's really good at helping to prevent them from getting triggered. And again, we're going to want to use this in people with migraines or headaches that have stress, tension, probably other heart symptoms, palpitations. That's going to be even a better fit, right? Especially good for headaches here in the front of the head and the top of the head. Okay. One cool use you won't see in any book is I have found this remedy, this should make sense to all of you now, is really good for stuttering. Stuttering in children during developmental disorders. Stuttering often happens with children as a result of like heart stress. So why does that make sense to us? It should be like, oh yeah, totally makes sense. Because in Chinese medicine, the heart regulates your tongue, right? Makes sense, right? That's how we got the idea for that, right? It's also good for adults, yeah. Especially good for stuttering. Like I said, that's caused. A lot of times children will get it when there's like a moving to a new house, a new school, you know, there's like a life event that's kind of stirring them up a little bit. Okay. That's a pretty cool thing to know. And panic attacks, we talked about that, right? Psychologically, this is also going to be for people that have unresolved heart issues from past relationships. It's like most of us have something there, right? We're working through. So yeah, let me say it again. Unresolved, like heartache, heartbreak, unresolved heart issues from past intimate relationships. Okay. I have found this myself. You have to have a partner who's open to this, but one of the coolest things you can do with Hawthorne and relationships is Hawthorne creates like this sense of peace in your heart. So like if your partner's open to this, one of the coolest thing you can do, like if you're having a argument or debate or something that's emotional, You can each drink hawthorn tea and like sit and face each other. And you drink like about half a cup, a whole cup before you start talking. You just kind of sit with each other. And then you drink hawthorn, and it puts you in the space where you can like, express without being too sharp, and you can listen a little bit better. And if you're really empathic, you don't feel so like attacked. But again, both people have to kind of be willing to do that. You could probably do that for like family members and that too. Or maybe your partner doesn't want to do that, but maybe you're like, oh, I need a little extra support before we have this kind of like heart-to-heart conversation, right? I'm sorry, we're talking about Linden. Yeah, Linden. So it's also really good like before couples counseling or just going to see the counselor. This is a great tea to drink before you go to counseling because it kind of like relaxes your heart and emotional mind. Okay. Okay. I wrote this a while ago. So the signature for Linden includes the idea of what we call bumblebee medicine, which is like a bumblebee, right? Someone who looks happy on the outside, but is on a mission to find love on the inside and an endless search for love to fill their heart. So when you are seeking emotional nourishment, this is your remedy. When I was in northern Wisconsin years ago, I went to this Native American cultural center, and I think this might have been where I got the idea for that with couples. There in I think it was the Menominee tribe of northern Wisconsin. They even had one at this on the reservation there. It's actually they would make like a little lodge, like a little pyramid or a little lodge of linden bark, and couples would go into it that were having issues. I don't know exactly what they did once they got in there, what their process was, but it's like even the idea that linden itself, even in all cultures, has this idea of the heart, right? Relationships, heart. So I thought that'd be so cool. We need to have a linden lodge. That would be a super cool name for a tea house or something, right? The Linden Lodge. Okay, so let's talk about the heart and cardiovascular system. So linden is one of the preeminent heart remedies. So it's good for almost everything with the heart. It's good for heart disease. Because it has these antioxidant-like compounds, it's good when people have blockages in their arteries and plaque buildup and blocked arteries. There's research that shows over time it can slowly break down some of those deposits and also help prevent them. It's good for poor circulation. It is good for blood pressure. We'll talk about that later. Herbs they're not as strong as drugs for blood pressure, the safe herbs. So you have to take that with a grain of salt, but they're helpful for blood pressure. And we're going to use linden literally for any time there's heart palpitations, again, pressure, tension, pain in the chest, whether it's after heart surgery, before, just almost literally anything related to the heart, we're going to use hawthorn also, but even as a preventative long-term use. Okay. It's also good for carotid blockages. It's one of the great stroke remedies to help prevent strokes, partially because it does release like vascular tension in the upper head and like neck area. It's like people that always have a red face and red head or headaches or migraines. It just has this effect on balancing blood flow to the head. So we use it to help prevent strokes in people that have a family history. or symptoms. And we also use it to help people that have had a stroke that are suffering consequences. Like they have numbness still, or they still have slurred speech, or they haven't regained like strength in a hand or something. This is one of the things we would do for that. This is also the remedy we would do when people are having some kind of radiation in the chest, like for the lungs. And the oncologist is really concerned about like the heart getting damaged from radiation. So we'd use it to kind of help protect the heart in a sense. Okay. It's definitely like if we put it into the chakra system, this is definitely like a heart and crown chakra plant. Chakra. Okay. There should be a lot more with the heart in my notes here. Should be a lot more. We can just sum it up and say literally any heart thing ever. So atherosclerosis. Oh, here's a couple good ones. Pericarditis, right? You have usually like a virus that will cause your pericardium, the sac around your heart, to like inflame. It can be really, really medically difficult to get through that. We would use Linden both in the acute stage and recovery stage of this viral triggered pericarditis. People that have pericardium pains, pericardium inflammation. Everybody remember we talked about the pericardium? It's like the protective sac around the heart. When most people feel like tension in their stress with anxiety, it's actually just that pericardium sac like tensing up. And Linden is specific for the pericardium. It's very, very specific. We would also use this for myocarditis caused by a virus. And we would also use this for myocarditis caused by a vaccine or vaccine damaged myocarditis, like with COVID vaccine. Or a lot of people got myocarditis from COVID. So this would be a perfect place where we would use linden flower. Okay, questions yet? No? Okay, skin. This is one of our best skin herbs that we don't give it credit for in America a lot. So this is one of the all-time great rash remedies. Like you have a rash, you got into something, you don't know what it is. It does not work for poison ivy, but like all other types of like irritations and rashes, hives and dermatitis, both. So we would use this topically, probably more as like a bath is easier to use. Or if it's like a localized area, we could do a poultice. But we also take it internally when people are having like really bad rashes. Yeah, before, like Benadryl and a lot of anti-allergy things, this is what would have been did like in mega doses at acute on stage to get people out of like an allergic state. So we can use this for acute allergy reactions, especially with the skin. It's not good for things like that are chronic, like eczema or psoriasis. This is more for like just like acute rashes and reactions and itchiness. Okay. Okay. Everybody's okay with that? Yeah, so not things that are chronic. This is more just like acute rashes and reactions. Okay. So the next area where it's going to excel is the immune system. So this is going to be for the onsets of colds or flus because this is a diaphoretic, right? A sweat-inducing remedy. This is going to be one of the preeminent things we do at the onset of any cold or flu, or you just feel like I got something, I don't know what it is. You know, you start to get the feeling like, oh, I think I'm about to come down with something. Linden tea, or if you have the tincture, you can put the tincture in hot water to make like a tea out of it. We would, it opens your pores and it like induces sweating and it lowers the body temperature, but it's not like a really major lymphatic herb though. Other herbs do that, but it's not really lymph driven. But it does induce a sweat, the onset of colds, flus, or fevers when you need to lower the body temperature. And again, this would be internally as a tea or tincture or as a bath. Like you can put infants in a bath, it'll lower their body temperature. What happens when you put like infants in an elderflower, linden flower bath though, or children or adults? First hour, it'll usually spike a little bit, and then but after hour 1, then it usually starts to recede. And like in really aggressive or chronic fevers, I mean, you might have to do this like every couple hours to get it under control. If it's an infant that's just really squirmish from the fever, you can also just sponge bath this on the babies. Did that before with the kids. Just literally just take like a wet, just get a cloth with the linden flower tea, and you just like pat the body, especially like the back of the head and the back and like the hands and feet. That's if children like won't get in the tub or something, but it's also good for adults with fevers too. But it is antiviral. It does have antiviral properties for influenza, not so much COVID and other things. So influenza and like just common cold and virus, it's really good for. It's really good for those viruses that affect the skin again, like chicken pox, monkeypox, hand, foot, and mouth disease. If you ever had children in daycare, you have kids that probably have hand, foot, and mouth disease at least once. It's really good for that. And again, you would topically treat it and give it to the children internally too. Okay. Okay. Shingles, somewhat helpful for it, yeah. What's that? Ringworm, no, ringworm is like just so resistant to stuff. You gotta have like just the parasite herbs. You gotta go all out. It's just so aggressive. That thing does not like to die. A dinosaur fungus, you know, it just does not like to die. This is just the archetypal cold flu remedy. You just start taking it. Even if you don't know what you have, you just start taking it right away. We haven't talked about diaphoretics, you know, directly yet, but the idea is that, you know, most viruses invade or from the outside in. So the idea is that by sweating, you're kind of like pushing out the influence of that virus right away. This would also be good if you've had heat stroke, right? Because why? It's like yarrow flower, right? It's going to help push the heat and help you break a sweat to like cool your body off, or we could drink this kind of like yarrow and that to help prevent heat stroke too. Yeah.
So it's okay to take this and yarrow together?
Yeah.
So you get hot and cold, or you just say
You'll still get a little warmish at first when you drink this, even though it's a cooling diaphoretic, because it'll like kind of just make you feel warm and kind of sweaty, and then you'll cool off though. Okay. This is why all the old timers, you know, in summer, it sounds counterintuitive to us. You know, they would wear long sleeves and overalls. You know, the idea is you want some sweat to be going to keep your pores regulated, right? People weren't walking around in just, you know, little shorts and like just no shirt or anything back in the day when they would work. They were covered up. Okay. I can't impress how important this is for viral acute viruses. That's something you should have on hand at all times. It is also really good it's very specific for when adults or kids have viruses or colds or flus, and you just feel like restless. You ever get that when you've had like an infection? You feel like restless, anxious, you can't sleep, you're like dream disturbed sleep, right? That is a great linden flower situation. It'll calm your nerves. It will help the virus. It'll help the irritation. It'll cool your body. It's just really good. Epstein-Barr, not as much for, it doesn't affect chronic viruses as much, more acute. And more when the acute virus affects like the lung or heart or skin. Okay, these are good questions. Okay. We also use it a lot. This is something I only learned about 10 years ago. I don't know if I accidentally figured this out or read it or what, but linden flower, because it's a demulcent, is really good when people have dry, irritated, reactive sinuses. Think fall and winter. Think summer Nebraska, dry, irritating dust blowing everywhere. Even though there's a lot of humidity right now, most people's membranes are still dried out because you're a little bit dehydrated, which dries your membranes out. And then remember when your sinus membranes are dry, they get super reactive. So I had a client today, this is like the perfect example. She had allergies for the first time ever. She has like mycobacterium in her lungs. It's like this lifelong thing people have, right? And she's did like all 3 available drugs for allergies. They've had 0 effect. Tested for everything. There's no virus, no COVID, nothing. And it's just because she's so dried out. She is just dried out. So we gave her linden tea, really excited to see what happens, right? Because linden tea would be even better because you're getting moisture, you're drinking water, right? And it's the demulcent properties are going to be like exaggerated. Okay, so this is really good for people that have chronic sinus irritation and they get reactive, especially like in the height of summer or when it gets really dry in fall and winter. If you're someone who says, ooh, I use my humidifier in winter and my sinuses feel so much better, like me, like you probably will respond good to linden flower. If it's from dryness, yeah, bloody noses from dryness. Yarrow was more for just bloody noses in general. We don't really know what's going on because it helps the blood vessels so much. There's something else there about the sinuses we want to say. Oh, sinuses, because linden is good, we said, for headaches in the sinus area. So it's not only good for sinuses, but it's good for like sinus headaches also. It does not decongest the ears like elderflower does. So it's a little bit different. We don't use it for ear stuff much, more for the sinuses. Okay. Those same line of logic, we also use linden flower at the onset of respiratory viruses like COVID, especially when they show up as what type of, how does it look? Allergies, dry cough, dry mouth, irritated like the COVID, like the little variation right now, right? Everybody gets the dry, irritated throat. They get like a dry, little dry, irritated cough. So we would use this for people that either have an acute virus that is in their lungs and it's manifesting as like a hot, dry cough or a spastic cough. Or we'd use this for people like after they've had a respiratory virus like COVID, like we saw for a lot of people that still, like months later have this lingering dry cough. And they're super paranoid about it, right? Because like every time they cough, they go, oh yeah, I don't have COVID, don't worry about it, right? It's just like really self-conscious experience ever since COVID, right? I've tested negative or like since 3 months ago, but I still have this cough. So linden's a really good remedy for that. Okay. We said stress, headaches, muscle tension. Like that's the main areas where we would use it for. Oh, it's also very good psychologically for OCD and manic states. So this is definitely, oh, there's one other thing here too. This is one of our greatest autoimmune herbs. If you have autoimmune condition that is triggered by stress, most every autoimmune condition is at least aggravated by stress or partially brought on by stress, yes. So it's not going to, like if you have rheumatoid arthritis, it's not really going to like affect your inflammation in your hands, but it's going to help get your immune system out of this attack mode, right? The autoimmune condition where it excels for is Hashimoto's thyroiditis. This is one of our greatest. Hashimoto's thyroiditis. You have autoimmune thyroid disease that's so common in America, right? So this is also really good for people that have, we said, hyperthyroidism. That's making their heart like just beat really fast and a lot of pressure in their chest. So everybody, we've talked about Hashimoto's thyroiditis a lot, right? It's an autoimmune disease that you don't really fall into like clear categories often because you can have low thyroid symptoms, you could have high. It's just kind of like a really confusing thing a lot of doctors struggle with. Okay. Okay. If you're gonna take it to like reverse like blockages in your arteries, that's gonna take a long time, right? You're gonna have to do Linden for like a year, 2 years. Like if you take it for, stress, it's gonna help right away. But just again, the nature of some diseases just take a really long time. Yeah, question.
So for Hashimoto's, is that just a long-term remedy? Really, so would it just be just like 3 drops?
Well, linden flower will help to regulates the immune system. It doesn't affect the thyroid at all, but it regulates the immune system. So yeah, people can get out of Hashimoto's. Linden flower is, probably not enough by itself to do it. But technically you can get to the point where yeah, you have no more thyroid antibodies or symptoms and that. So it can get to like the deeper root of it. But if you have like, say, for example, Hashimoto's and you're on thyroid medicine and you're just still having all the symptoms, this is a really good remedy to try. Again, it's not, what's nice about it is it doesn't make your thyroid like slow down or speed up hormonally. It just affects the other constellation of it. It can be sometimes caused by a virus or stress or hormone changes, food allergy. Yeah, there can be all kinds of triggers for it. Yeah. But yeah, Epstein-Barr virus can often trigger Hashimoto's. Okay. So yeah, I want to make that really clear. So Linden does not affect the thyroid, so we can do with any medication. But if you have high thyroid, your heart is going to be beating like crazy and you're going to feel super anxious. And this can really help those symptoms of it, but it still will not interact with any thyroid drug. And if you have stress induced like low thyroid, it's not going to like bring your thyroid up hormonally, but it'll help manage like the stress. And if you have autoimmune Hashimoto's thyroiditis, it can actually downregulate your immune system from not being so reactive and attacking your thyroid. Because that's usually a really big stress triggered reaction. Okay, so everybody's okay with that? Remember, a lot of times in Chinese medicine, most of our heart remedies will regulate the thyroid because they're so close to each other, right? Okay. That's a theme that we see a lot. Okay. So this would be a remedy too for anybody that's had, because this is going around a little bit, and some of the newer variations of COVID is causing meningitis now. So when adults or children are having meningitis, right, that's where your like cerebral spinal fluid or brain can swell up from a virus. It can get really serious, right? You can get really, really serious. Usually have fevers, you know, restlessness, and then eventually it gets into like non-responsive adults or children, right? Just shake them and they don't respond, right? So this is really good for the onset when things like are starting to look like they're going that direction with like a severe headache, restlessness, fever that can't be managed. This is like a good remedy to try to work in right away. Okay, it's also good after you've had meningitis, again, even if it was 25 years ago when you were a kid. Okay, meningitis is one of those diseases that creates like severe scar or lesion in our constitution. So it's one of them we always ask about. It's like having Lyme's disease or, you know, a stroke. It creates such a profound effect on the body. Some people never like totally shift out of it. Okay. We'll talk more about meningitis when we do like fever remedies and things like that soon this fall. Okay, how's that? There's a lot more, but is linden flower really gentle? Super gentle. It doesn't interact with any known medications, but we always say be careful of using it with heart medications or hypertension medications. It doesn't interact with them, but the idea is that it can potentially lower your blood pressure. But again, it's not super dramatic for lowering blood pressure. Okay. So let's see if we forgot anything. What's that? That's amazing. Even just colicky, grouchy children. But this is especially for infants when feverish and have an infection and just fussy. This is like one of the major fussy baby remedies. Okay. This, you ready for this? Linden is the empath remedy. Empath, you're empathic. Your heart is very gentle. You're very sensitive. You pick up on everyone's emotions and energy. This is what you drink when you know you're going to have to go to like a concert or some emotionally charged event, and you know you're just going to be like picking up on all the energy, or you're just around a bunch of family and their stress, or just a work environment, right? This is the empath remedy. It calms, cools, restores, kind of protects your heart. This is a great herb, like we said with hawthorn, to poultice right over your breastbone. If you ever had like heart physical problems or emotional concerns. It is a really good crown chakra herb too, for those that are into chakras. Okay. In Europe, linden tree is just absolutely embedded into European culture, right? Most town squares are built around a linden tree. Judges and verdicts used to be done under, in some parts of Europe, they still are in some small towns, read under linden trees. People used to be married under linden trees. People used to have linden flowers in their wedding. We call that a garment, laurel, crown. Yeah. Some people feel because it's linden's calming effect on the heart. No one knows why they did this. The practice is so old. So as far as like being the town center, a lot of people feel historically that's because Linden has this calming effect on the heart. So like everyone would be more calm and rational when you would give a judgment or like a town edict or something like that. Okay. Um, Linden is a really good remedy for acceptance too. Especially if you have to try to like accept something that's really difficult to accept, right? A lot of people I have noticed too, a lot of people find their life partner when they're taking Linden in a formula. This is like a cool little just magical thing I've noticed with patients. I'm just really nerdy like that. Anytime people have like a radical like healing or spontaneous healing or emotional or their whole lives change, I'm always like, okay, go back like the last couple months, just like reading like a detective, looking at the big picture. Um, very, very cool. Okay. It also is a good remedy when we have acceptance of spiritual lessons that might be super difficult. Like, we know something had to happen, but damn it, we didn't want it to, right? I just wish it didn't go that way, or it could have went more easy, right? Okay. It's also a very good herb to help people meditate and to train. For people who say they can't meditate, they can't calm their mind, this is like a great herb to help people try to like train to be able to meditate a little bit or to relax. Like if you're going to do yoga, you're going to do guided relaxation, this is like an herb that you can take before that. Okay. It's also good for nightmares. We would call this a love medicine, right? Okay. Okay, we could go into more. And also it's kind of interesting to know too, in European culture, we talked about elderflower being this way too, is considered like a representation of like the divine feminine. So linden flower tree is often like one of the symbols of like femininity and like the divine feminine too in a lot of European cultures. Okay. It's an interesting Greek story I found once. I don't know who this person, anybody know who Philyra is? Greek historical person. So it says that Philyra conceived Chiron. She then changed herself into a linden tea, but it's important because Chiron, remember, was the one that taught Asclepius and that whole lineage. So it's like linden is almost like embedded in the beginning of herbal medicine in the Western world. Oh, we need to find out who that person is. Philyra, Phylyra. Phylyra. Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of kind of folklore stuff I have in here, but let's just call it good. That's good. That's the essence of linden, right? Okay. Questions on linden? It's good for adults, good for kids, good for the elderly. Just really good. Okay. All right. No questions on it. That's it. We're going to close the chapter on it. You can make linden really, really strong. The tincture we said you can taste is more like aromatic, and it's more floral, right? This, by the way, linden flower, I don't have any right now, it's at home. Linden flower is a major essential oil in European aromatherapy, but we can't really find it in America much. But it's used for all the same things with the heart, high blood pressure, headaches, anxiety, where people are having heart problems. And it's also used for sedate people. But the essential oil, it literally smells like a flower perfume, like honeybee flower. Um, it's kind of an expensive, I don't know why it's an expensive oil, because it should be pretty easy to make. So it is actually used in perfumery a lot. You know, a lot of these companies spend a lot of money keeping their secrets, right? Of all their essential oils and all their perfumes, right? I don't think Old Spice has like real essential oils and stuff, but like we're talking like higher end stuff like Chanel and all those types of things. Maybe they do now. Okay, no other questions on Linden? What's the difference between Linden and Hawthorn in general? One's a shrub, like Hawthorn would be more of a shrub. Linden's like a gigantic tree. It's like one linden tree in your yard, you're good to go forever, right? They're both nerve calming. Linden's probably more nerve calming overall. They're both good for like OCD and panic attacks, but again, Linden's probably more nerve calming, where Hawthorn is better when your heart is actually diseased physically. Hawthorn, we said, is more emotionally when people have a broken heart and they're super guarded. They have like that thorn around them, around their heart, right? Where Hawthorn is more the opposite for people who are almost like too loving, too empathic, like wear their heart on their sleeve. Does that make sense? Where Hawthorn person is going to be like more guarded and like not really super expressive, probably. Okay. They both lower blood pressure. They're both good for blockages in the arteries and preventing heart disease. But Hawthorn, yeah, it's just Hawthorn is more researched. If you're really into the research, like Hawthorn has a ton more research with it than linden flower. One big difference is that Hawthorn has nothing to do with like viruses, fevers, that type of stuff, muscle tension, doesn't do any of that where linden flower does. If we want to compare and contrast. It's a wonderful bath, one of my all-time favorite baths, but you could also do it internally too. But it will really relax your muscles as a bath. Like, it's also really good in a dream pillow. Yeah, it's one of our top 5 dream pillow herbs. To induce good dreams, and it's good for people that have nightmares. It doesn't have any protective effect, you know, like St. John's wort or elderflower in a dream pillow, but it's just good for inducing the sweet, nice dreams. Yep. Otherwise, there's a lot of similarities, but they're definitely 2 different things a little bit. I mean, one major difference simply is that linden flower is also demulcent. It has this kind of like moisturizing effect that Hawthorn just doesn't have that at all. Okay, are you ready for cardiotonics? I'm going to get through this. We did all the warming